Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Ildefonso, and I work in the Office of Civics and Community Services here at the Los Angeles Public Library. Welcome to our final program for Black Maternal Health Week. Today's program, The Everyday Black Mother, Owning My Truth, is with Rayshell Chambers. Rayshell is going to introduce herself in just a few moments. The Black Maternal Health Week campaign, founded and led by the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, takes place every year from April 11th through 17th and is a week of awareness, activism, and community building intended to amplify community-driven policy, research, and care solutions with a focus on maternal health, birth, and reproductive justice in the United States. The U.S. is one of the most dangerous countries to give birth, and the racial disparities in birth outcomes persist. While the preterm birth rate declined for the first time in 6 years, the rate did not decline in LA or Orange counties. Furthermore, the disparity gap persists. In LA County, Black babies are 2 to 3 times more likely to die before their first birthday than babies of other races. Black women are 4 times more likely to die as a result of pregnancy complications than women of other races. We see these disparities for Black women despite their education level and income. Chronic inequities, racism, stress, and unequal access to quality care are the root causes for these racial gaps in birth outcomes. Along with the March of Dimes and Painted Brain, the Los Angeles Public Library is providing programming, books, and community resources to uplift Black mothers and their families. You can watch our most recent programs and past programs on our YouTube channel. Through these programs, we hope to shed light on these experiences and to discuss uplifting community-driven solutions and policies to decrease disparities in birth outcomes for Black women, mothers, and their families. We work together to improve health outcomes for Black women and our most vulnerable neighbors. We improve health outcomes for all mothers and their children. Rayshell, we've spent some time in the past few days sharing stories prior to today's event. I enjoyed learning more about what's been driving you to do the important work that you do. Let's get to it. Do you want to take a brief moment to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Rayshell Chambers. I'm a Black community advocate that has made it to my life purpose to share my story, no matter how comfortable it is, to empower Black mothers and BIPOC individuals to live their best life. I'm also a community advocate and just want to share my story here today and to talk to you about my experiences as a business, as a mama, as a care provider, as a survivor of a traumatic birth experience. Yeah, and I just want to get started and share my story.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here today. I know you're really busy. When you became pregnant, what was your approach or strategy in uplifting and trying to ensure that you had a positive experience? Did you work with a doula or a midwife?
To be honest with you, I think I went into pregnancy like overconfident and really thinking that if I read, checked all the boxes, like I had a really healthy pregnancy. I ran most of the time. I actually joined a circling approach to pregnancy treatment or before the term support. So I worked with a number of other mothers and a nurse to like check our own heart rates, share our experiences. It was supposed to support with isolation, like the circling model. So I really took, I thought and informed an approach to really, make sure that I had a healthy birth, pregnancy, and I did. I did look for a doula, but I wasn't able to, find one or in enough time. And I think that also, presented some challenges for me, like, during the birth, because that was, the time where I had the most challenges and, and that was the most traumatic part. So that was one of the areas where, I should have probably made more of an investment in time and making sure I had that support, in birth. But overall, I was healthy up until I got to that hospital.
Okay, I understand. And I just want to take a minute to let our viewers know and remind them that we had a program on Monday in regard to doulas and midwives, which is a lot of great resources there. So definitely to send people back to watch that recording. It's on our YouTube channel. And so you noted that, in our pre-conversation that you had a traumatic birth, and obviously we're leading up to that right now. So how did your birth trauma experience impact your postpartum recovery?
Yeah. So, since it was traumatic, I want to just know that, I did have an experience. So if this, content is really triggering for you, take a break, take a second, because it definitely is, really hard and for a lot of women to share their experiences. But yeah, so since, I had challenges, I had to have an emergency C-section. My son had lost air. And so that was in itself. And, I think that really made me isolated. I kind of doubted myself, and I felt the shame. I also had issues with breastfeeding. I did have a friend that's an amazing nurse. Nurses are amazing. Just shout out to the nurses that came to my house. And, and I cried and I was like, my son's not latching. And she helped me, told me what vitamins to use. But yeah, it was definitely challenging. And I'm a working mother, and not to discount mothers that I think working is a number of different areas. So working, being a full-time mom is a full-time equivalent job. But I also had a job outside of the home, and, breastfeed. And my job was amazing to me. But the room that I had was a little different, like a closet so that postpartum, trying to navigate that and work and, trying to, trying to pump milk at work and, getting, having to have, I had challenges with that. So yeah, I think that whole, that's like they say in mental health planning, I think the crisis planning or planning, I believe for women, the conversation, particularly for us, I think it needs to happen. We need to plan for crises just like how we should in mental health and health, particularly in birth. So yeah, I definitely say that, traumatic birth impacted how, my postpartum challenges. And I really did have to connect to other women for support. My mother was amazing. My mother, moved from Oakland to really be there for me and really during the healing process of a C-section, which was very, very challenging. She was there for me to pick my son up when I couldn't even lift up, so I just want to, women are strong. If anything, that to uplift, like I saw like this mighty power in me that I never knew that I had. And I never women as so magical and just, more, to just, in this dark, some of the dark experiences I did see like the power of women and community come together and sharing birthing stories in the hospital to other women. So to even being ashamed of the stripes, I had other women tell me, they seen it as honor stripes. So, the positives was, like I want to mention was that I did see so many women come to me and be supportive and to help me in that process. It does take a village.
Yeah, I definitely I've heard that from a lot of new moms. And it's really great that you were able to, connect with people and get that support that you needed. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, I think, later. So how old was your child when you received their autism diagnosis? And can you tell us about your experiences in navigating healthcare post-diagnosis?
Yeah, so I'm really using this space because it is, like I said, a very uncomfortable space, but I am a peer, an individual lived experience that utilizes that experience to
Mhm.
support and help others through my journey of recovery to support others. So I say that, so when I'm talking about my son, it is something that I do as an offering to support other people. And so this conversation is really to hopefully to help another person that's ashamed, that doesn't understand, to know that it happens to so many women. So I got the diagnosis around 3 because I had decided, well, COVID, hit right after my son was born a little bit afterwards. And then I, didn't put him in daycare, which, I had my own, beliefs and myths. And if I would have done it over, I would have made sure that, he was in a more social setting, or a child is in a more social setting. So they probably could have caught on to certain things. But we found out at 3, he was in a school, in a system. I don't want to knock certain systems, but he was in a school system that wasn't the public school system. And he basically got kicked out of the school. And I had to bring, and the one thing I didn't know much. So this is me coming into it. The navigation piece started when they were treating me and looking at me different at the school. And my kid's dad, I was like, they're looking at me. I don't think they like me, and I'm trying to figure out, like, so then the principal comes to me and it's like, your son, needs someone with him. Like, it was not positive. And so I bought it. All I knew is that OT is someone, and we'll talk a little bit more, but we Painted Brain, we have OTs. And I was like, okay, I don't know. I think this OT is going to assess if my son is functioning in his environment. I hired a private OT, and that's because I had the resources. And I just want to let you know, a lot of individuals do not have those resources. So I bought the OT into the school, and she uncovered that, there was some major challenges with how my son was being treated with the teachers, but that he did need some additional resources. So then that OT began to help me navigate as best as they could through a complex system of a global pandemic, to be able to then get my son an IEP, and utilize that one OT assessment to then go to LAUSD. I Googled, LAUSD special education, contacted so many numbers, tired, crying, but finally got him, got connected, got him a modified, and this OT, my OT said she never saw a parent get as many resources as fast as I did. That navigation of, like, contacting a district that had never saw my son, utilizing this one OT report, and then contacting the regional center, which I did afterwards because he was 3. So the regional center really works like at that birth to, 2, up until the kid is 2, and then they go, or 3, to the school system. So I kind of missed that rim, but they still provide some resources. So I got him assessed there in that system, navigated all the way through the ABA, so we're in that, and I got him private speech through my insurance. But it was intense, and I'm sure the people that's listening to me, like, wow, this is intense. But it was like spending restless nights trying to Google the whole, what's the most effective treatment plan, for a parent that is, trying to navigate, effective autism support. So yeah.
I have heard a lot about the regional centers, that they're a great place for people to start learning about, how they can advocate for themselves. Because I think, like anything else that, at least I feel like that I encounter, you really, you may have expectations like, oh, there are groups of people here to help me, but then you actually have to do a lot of that lifting yourself, because those groups can't do the advocacy for you. And I think that in our heads, sometimes before we might engage with, an organization or a government service, like, we might think that I'll just show up and they'll be able to do all the stuff. And they often have so much to do that you have to really, it's a team thing. You have to do it together. And I think it must feel really daunting to kind of, just do it when it feels like you're doing it by yourself. So it sounds like you started off at the regional center, and then you also, when we had talked, you said that you felt like, before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit more about your connection to occupational therapy, because you mentioned the report several times. And so maybe touch base on how through the regional center, how through talking to peers, you learned about occupational therapy as something that would really help you. So how did you get connected to the world of occupational therapy? Because when I think about occupational therapy, I don't think about its uses in the pediatric environment or in this way. So maybe you want to share more about that.
Yeah. So occupational therapy can be used. It helps. Like the most like general way is like an occupational therapist helps an individual function like in their daily life. It could be children, family, in any setting, helps you function in a setting. I heard about occupational therapy because Pain and Brain actually provides occupational therapy support for adults and helping them function in their day-to-day life, and the creating individualized plans to support whatever areas. We had started to work with and families, but I run a whole company with multiple services, and I hadn't used all those services. Yeah, I am. Yeah, so I am one of the co-founders of Pain and Brain. So the Pain and Brain provides those services. So I literally had to take a step back and like look at what I provided, and then go to my occupational therapist, which is Rena. I want to really just, let people know occupational therapist changed my whole life with my son. Like the minute I was able to get an occupational therapist to come in to support me and my functioning at home and giving me the parenting skills, supporting me with self-regulation, not just my son, and helping with that, that is when everything transformed. They were able to connect me. Okay, make sure you have the speech therapist, make sure, you have the regional center. And they kind of helped me and grounded me with like like you were saying, those expectations. Like people go to the regional center thinking that, oh, they're going to get all these. No, like, especially like you have to be the biggest advocate. And I think that's what, OTs and the regional center and other, school system, they're teaching you like you're the number one advocate. Yeah. And I just wanted to kind of just give you kind of some points like OTs so that folks can get like, and I'm reading a little bit, but OTs are proven to help with like self-esteem, and competence, self-regulation, family bonding, problem solving, sleep and rest, feeding routines, which I really needed with my son, behavioral organization, attention, which, that I really needed support, and school-based activity. The OT came into the school and came into the home and really provided us with support with that, and creating ideas for play, like low-cost ways for that parent-child bonding. And they really work with all ages. So I just wanted to kind of provide an education about OT, and I cannot say, I could say go on and on about OTs.
It's actually really impressive, the breadth of the scope of work for an OT. And when I was first learning about that kind of work, tangentially, I've also read that OTs help people who have ADHD and auditory processing disorders, and all kinds of people with all kinds of mental health, challenges or barriers that they're facing, may find useful strategies from working with an OT. Because I think it can really empower a person to resume that kind of control. Because I think that when you are facing things that you don't understand about yourself, about your child, those are big questions. How do you support your child in the best way that's good for you, that's good for your child, when you're facing something you don't have that lived experience yourself, or that you haven't, it helps give you that baseline that you can kind of grow from. And OTs do just amazing things. It's just, I'm so impressed with what they can do. And I feel like we should all be working more with OTs just in general.
Everybody.
So, yeah. So I'm really excited to learn that Painted Brain does do some, you can contact Painted Brain and get in touch with working with an OT, because from your experience and what you're sharing, it can be really life-changing. Or it is life-changing, and why not, live optimally for your child, for yourself.
Yes.
And I want to talk more about those tools and strategies, but I want to go back to support group. So you created a support group, and I was curious before when we were talking, what was missing for you with existing support groups? What happens in the support group that you ended up creating? And maybe you could walk us through like what a group session might look like for people attending the first time.
Yeah, so I started a support group because I really wanted to support working mothers that were going through some of the like major challenges, which is processing like everything that was going on. So there are support groups that are currently going on in different regions. So I didn't want to take away from that, but I really wanted to focus on working parents and helping them navigate through the insurance system. And so my support groups happen every other Thursday at 7:30, and the link is on the Painted Brain website. And we just go there to share spaces, space for you to talk about, to vent and then get empowered. It's very important to share your story, and then utilize those tools to really support you. So
And what did you feel? So you wanted to create something that, for working moms, for working parents, were you feeling like the support groups, were you feeling like the other support groups were more focused on the children themselves?
Yeah, I think that's really, and I wanted to focus on the parent, and that intersection with work and yeah, so it wasn't to take away, and I wanted to lead the conversation. I wanted to hear from others. So, I took the lead.
And I appreciate we chatted a little bit before you shared that, sometimes when your child receives a diagnosis that is neurodivergent, that you can feel a lot of shame, that you may not find support in places where you previously had support. So, for example, someone, maybe you see them casually, you know them from somewhere in your general world, and you explain what's going on in your life, and their response is, "Oh, that's a real thing? Like, I don't believe in that." Or, so that you had said you encountered some of those responses, and that it was troubling for you, that you felt like, no, this is, these are real diagnoses. This is something that I have to work with, and you wanted to create a group of people who really also, were supporting that diagnosis and and creating understanding around it and support for that specific space. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I literally have been I was literally kind of ashamed to like tell people, and like you said, the response I did get back was like, "Oh no, nothing's wrong, you know okay." I really had to uh go outside those networks and really share what I really think that what I thought was appropriate. Now what I think people should know, but it's not something that I like even now go. I don't Everybody's not going to understand, particularly autism is a very unique diagnosis, and it's on a spectrum. So some people have whatever belief. So I just now take it as, I'm going to share what I need to share, and I know what I know. And yeah.
Yeah, and that you don't need to feel shame about, you know, you don't have to engage with shameful behavior which just kind of perpetuates that, where people are, when people are dismissive and say, "Oh, he'll grow out of it.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
my child was like that. He's fine now." A lot of people just in general may be dismissive or have their own perspective on that, and that's their own lived experience. But it can be, I think, a real challenge if you're dealing with something that's very real and very unique, and you don't want to walk around explaining yourself all the time, but you also want to create like a space for yourself where you can get that support from people who are sharing those diagnoses or understand what it feels like to have people, reject their life, their life as they're living it.
Yeah, I
As
think that oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's one of the topics that come up at the support group, like,
Mhm.
maybe the other spouse doesn't even believe that that's happening, and so, like, when you're trying to coordinate services, like, if you're in a separated household, you know where's the parity at? So, it is, like, I think that that's what it was, for me, so, I think that that's where especially professionals, and not to take away from other people, but like particularly if you're a high thriver and you're doing all these different, and, uh, you know, someone every day, probably every other day, coming to you and talking to you about your child and what they're doing. It's like, or not believing you, and then the other people are telling you it's crazy. So having a space is very important, and I'm really
Mhm.
thankful to be able to do that.
Well, it's really amazing that you went out and built something that you knew that you needed, and, now it's a group of people, and you're all supporting each other in this journey. Are there other things that you'd like to share about, like, what you've learned, um, in this journey, or other tools and strategies that you're using right now to help you get through your days?
Yeah, I mean, with the OTs, they really helped. They focused me on like staying calm, like what. So some of my tools in my three, literally like basic tools, like understanding that I am going to be frustrated, that it is going to be challenging,
Mhm,
making sure I get rest, drinking water, that I work out. Those are things for myself, some of the tools so that I can stay whole for my
mhm,
son, because every day it's an opportunity to really learn. It's a different experience having a child that has a developmental disability. So really being able to utilize the tools of a coping tools to really maintain my wellness so that I can support my son, and like support groups is really the biggest thing. And if folks just other things, I know that other people they go to therapy, they find mindfulness. I have mindfulness practice. So yeah, I think that those are the tools. I do give myself space,
Can you
get sad.
can you tell, what would be an example of, like, a self-regulation technique or a mindfulness tool? Like, what are those? We talk about them, but, like, I wanna name 1 or 2 here just for examples, if you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, like breathing, like even with my son and his ABA, like, stopping to take, 3 breaths, like I was out and really feeling overwhelmed. My son, I think he was really hungry, and I really had to take the breath. I had to stop and
Mm,
breathe.
mhm,
I think that that's really one the breath is probably your strongest regulation tool. I think that's really, and then I actually meditate. Well, I do a lot of like, you know, meditation, and I listen to, a lot of like frequency, like stimulating mindfulness frequency music to just clear my brain and my thoughts. So
mhm,
that helps me with my mental regulation. But I think it's for each its own.
mhm,
I think that that's really the really bigger thing. It's like you working with an occupational therapist,
mhm.
and someone to support you to find those regulation tools that's really gonna support you right best with what you need.
Awesome. That's helpful to know. I think that, I've been reading also that people keep gratitude journals,
Oh yeah.
also as a grounding strategy to manage, other things that feel insurmountable, but that there are always, small wins that you can be really grateful for. And the act of reminding yourself of those things can go a long way in, how you meet your day, so to speak. So I think that those are all, it's just, and it's great to be reminded that it looks different for everybody. So everyone may have a different strategy that's recommended to them by someone like an occupational therapist. That's really great to know. And then, so I guess, what do you think, you've mentioned it a little bit before, but what has this journey shown you the most about yourself?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure, I kind of stuttered there. What has this journey shown you the most about yourself?
Wow. It has shown me that I have a lot of work to do.
Mm,
Like when I first came into this journey, it was really like, oh, about my son, right? It was about like all, and then when doing the work with occupational therapists and the behavioral therapy, like the work that needed to happen with me, you know what I'm saying? I needed to do like with my regulation, my coping skills. And I like how you said the gratitude journals. I do a lot of empowerment work. Like I read a lot of like encouraging empowerment, mindfulness, book. And so I keep that in like a Pinterest app so that I can be reminded on sayings. But I needed like this journey really showed me that I really needed to keep that tool, like really sharpen those tools for
mhm,
coping. Like I told you, like I also am an individual who lived mental health experience, so I have my own journey, right? Like and my own
mhm,
recovery. And then now added, I'm blessed to have, take the next level to support another individual, which is my son, and we're talking about the context of my son, but I'm also a caregiver for my aging mom. But so it taught me about like how to take care of myself and how to take care of others. Um, yeah, I think it's really been, I'm at the next level of my life, and I've seen like how magical even like I can be, like the human can be, like and women, like, that we are just amazing. We heal this whole earth, and that journey really shows like all the tools that you need and the people that you need to support you. So yeah, this journey is just continuing to like, build me up, to help me be a better person. I believe everything I'm talking to you about, no
mhm,
matter what, has made me so much stronger.
mhm,
In the midst of this, I started a whole business. You know, um, I have other employees. I have community.
mhm,
So my son, showed me how strong I was. He definitely he empowers me every day, and he gives me the patience that I need to go talk to others. Like I'm so much kinder, I'm so humbler to other
mhm,
people now, so
mhm.
this journey is just humbling me. I don't know, I can keep going about this journey. It's shown me
Yeah,
so much.
well, that's amazing, and I think that, on a for different reasons, I think that anytime, like, I've been in a really giant learning curve, I just feel like the more humbled I feel all the time, like, we think we know a lot more than we do, and I think those are different kinds of coping strategies of, you fake it till you make it kind of thing, but, there are things that you actually have to have real knowledge in to advance, like the cause of your child, the cause of yourself, the cause of
Mhm.
your family, and if you can't, if the existing support systems and structures aren't working for you, then it's really savvy, and it shows like the self-belief that you had to like just do something on your own to start meeting those needs and the needs of the vacuum that you saw in the community to provide the support for, you said it's mostly BIPOC women in your support group.
Yeah, but all it was started by every woman. So, but it's one of the founding people who gave me the idea
Mhm.
was she wasn't a BIPOC individual, but
Mhm.
she had disclosed to me on a text message thread when I got really depressed, and I have a text message thread with like some of my friends because I'm a technical writer too, so I have friends that I've kept, and I was like, my son has autism, and then she told me, and I was like, wait, she's like, and she was empowered because she was like, yeah, my son, and after a certain number of after second grade, he was in the general education, and I was like, wow, I would have said anything, I would have never known, like I thought, so. And I was like, I should start a support group. And she was like, yes. So yeah, it's for BIPOC, everybody. But I think it's just, I really want to focus on BIPOC women because it's just so hard, already just being, a
Mhm.
minority. And then in addition to having someone in your life with a disability, that intersection between, and we've seen it. I mean, and I can go on, but you definitely have to protect your children and protect yourself, particularly being a person of color with a disability. And I've
Mhm.
experienced, racism and, some abuses with my son. And so really needing to make sure I have like a strong support system with lawyers. I mean, some people that join our, lawyers, social practitioners. So we get to like share resources as well.
Mhm.
And I was able to lean on one of my lawyer friends, when I experienced some challenges. So yes, I had to create something, and I'm just gonna empower any person. Like it's not gonna be easy, but there are people out there for you, and you got to do the work, but I'm here, other people are here to support anybody that needs help.
And you mentioned two other organizations that you found helpful, and we're going to talk about those. One is Parentingblackchildren.org, and the other one is Therapeutic Play Foundation. So, just as a note to viewers, we don't know all of the services that these um, organizations provide. So, you can contact them on your own to learn about what you might be eligible for in terms of what is free, what may be reduced pay. But they are organizations that are active in this space, and may be able to refer you to additional resources that you may not be aware of. So, if you think that you shouldn't reach out, you definitely should. It's always great to ask questions. And so let's talk a little bit about parentingblackchildren.org. You had mentioned them as a.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So the executive director is Ardina, and I was referred to by a number of people, in addition to the regional center representative, but by also Therapeutic Play, Nakia Fields, because my son had experienced an abuse, and I was alone, I was isolated. She, wrapped her arms around me, supported me, empowered me, told me her story. She is a fellow MPA, has different contracts with state and regional centers across our local region. Is a credible resource. I believe has a Wednesday open group that anybody can join, particularly Black mothers with questioning if they have their child has a disability or has one. Just a great all-around support when I really was lonely and didn't know what to do, empowered me. And I recommend anybody reaching out that just needs support. Everybody, you have to put the pieces together, your toolbox for your child. And this is one resource that I would recommend putting in your toolbox.
Great. And then the other one was you mentioned Nikia's Therapeutic Play Foundation.
Yes.
Just from that. And I know that you've had some really positive interactions with Nikia over the years.
Oh, definitely one of the strongest advocates that I know for Black mothers. I know that she had the opportunity to come on this programming before to discuss her
Right.
work and her advocacy. But that was really how I knew, on the advocacy side, about the dire. I wasn't the Black mothers were suffering. And she does a lot of advocacy work, does a lot of doula work. She is a doula, connects individuals to doulas, has a mommies support group, can link you to free diapers, particularly and throughout LA County. I think she really focuses on LA County and I think the San Gabriel Valley region with LA County DPH. So yeah, just a great resource for mental health services, and can find a way to connect you to resources if you need them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And then lastly, I just want to refer people back to our maternal and family health page, where many of these resources are listed. And it's always a list that's growing. And those resources are, most of them are government, nonprofit, low cost, no cost, mostly no cost. I think it's hard to put all of those pieces together. So if we can just at least help in getting, a resource sheet available to people, it's really helpful. And also good to know, it's hard to know sometimes from descriptions, like what people do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really impactful to hear about like how it helped you. And then it's like, I want some of that. How, whatever this is, I need it. So I would like for us to figure out what those things are to help me. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we conclude today?
Yeah, I just want to do a call to action and empowerment to empower any individual that might be questioning, even about their mental health, that there's help and support out there. There are a number of organizations like the Painted Brain. You can also go to the Department of Mental Health if you're needing any resources. There's also support, like I told you, like if you're also questioning if your daughter's having some challenges, that you think they might need a diagnosis or some additional support, contact your local regional center. They'll at least connect you to where you need to go. But these other organizations that we mentioned will give you a little bit more of a warmer way in the right direction. And but I want to let you know that there's help and support, and that it's okay to feel any distress, but after you acknowledge the feelings, to get out there, to be inquisitive, to seek resources, to connect, to find community, because you're not going to be able to do it alone. And there are organizations, such as the Painted Brain, such as peer-run organizations across the city of LA and LA County, to really connect you to supports. If you need self-help support groups, there's a number of organizations, such as Share, that can help you. So yeah, I just want to let you know that there's hope, there's recovery, there's connection. Community is possible, and you're not alone. No matter what, there's folks out there that care and that want to connect.
Thank you so much. That's the most important message, right? Because you aren't alone in this, and there's so many people out there, which is why we want to have programs like this to share resources, to share experiences, informally, formally. Sometimes it's not easy to hear, and it's disheartening, but I think the uplift is in that community and in people doing things for themselves, or they see a vacuum, getting things going. You've had a lot of success. I just also wanted to mention before we close out, the County of Los Angeles does also have a program. The website is blackinfantsandfamilies.org, and it's run by the Department of Public Health. So they have a lot of programs also there, related to doulas, midwives, mental health services. So there's more information on our resource list. But yeah, be sure to take that minute for yourself to check out those resources, because I think, everyone gets used to kind of living in the world that they're living in, and they don't, especially if it's a hard and difficult world that you feel like you're living in, it's hard to imagine like reaching out to get that, like that world could change. Like, how is that possible? You've been living in that world for so long that you forget that, a connection, a turn of the corner, a meeting of another person, like it can be disheartening to hit dead ends and roadblocks, but that you can also meet extraordinary people who do extraordinary things and, be connected and uplifted by the work that people are collectively doing together. You just kind of got to get there. So, one step is all it takes sometimes, right?
One day one step at a time.
Yep, that's for sure. So I wanted to thank you so much for sharing, for your vulnerability today, and your willingness to be open and have this conversation. And thank you for sharing so much about your experiences, some challenges, and then also, focusing on these resources that we can help people, find the resources that will work for them. And I think that wraps it up today. I don't see that we have any questions. So I think we're good. And there's the email. You can reach out to Painted Brain. And that's all, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to check out our website for more information. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.